So the polyrhythm option in the menu brings up this little display. So here you can choose what your polyrhythm wants to be. So let's say 4/3. And then on the right, we have time signature auto is turned on. And below that, it explains what this means. So the time signature will be set to 3/4 so that the bottom sequencer contains 3 quarter notes. So we're going to have a 3/4 signature down here and just have quarter notes on it. Because when you have a polyrhythm, usually you want some musical sense for that. So 5 against 7 over a bar of 4/4 doesn't make that much musical sense. 5/7 might make more sense if you were in 7/4 and you were spreading 5 notes over that space. So when you have the time signature on, the second side of this will be turned into a time signature. So you can see if I said 4 against 5, this says the time signature will be set to 5/4. So the bottom sequencer contains 5 quarter notes. 4 against 6, it would set the bottom sequencer to 6/4. So whatever you have on this side will be the time signature, and you will have quarter notes. And whatever you have on this side, it will divide that sequencer into that many notes. So let's do 5 against 4. So we'll have 4/4 on the bottom and an evenly spaced 5 notes in the top. And then when you hit create, you get your bar of 4/4 and you get your 5 over the top, and it automatically adds some counting. And this counting is added to line 2 of the metronome. And you can see in the mixer, we have the volume of line 1 and the volume of line 2. And line 1 is just going to play whatever the default sound for that is. So we'll have sounds other than the counting. So if I hit play,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2,
you can see that we're hearing the voice counting here. We're not hearing this voice counting because line 2 is muted by default. If I turn this up, now you hear both voice counts. So I can mute that. So you have different options. I can mute the voice count here, and then you just hear the 4 against 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So you have different ways of hearing that polyrhythm by adjusting these faders. So to get to this stage, I wanted to add a little bit more to the polyrhythm to explain how polyrhythms work, because you can play this and you can hear it, but to divide a bar of 4/4 evenly into 5 notes is not necessarily an easy thing to do. But there is a way of working out polyrhythms. And if we go back to the polyrhythm page, we turn the grid on, this description changes. And the top part of the description stays the same. That is that we'll have a bar of 4/4 on the bottom. And then here it says each quarter note in sequencer 1 will be subdivided into 5. And accents will be placed above every 4th note, lining up with the rhythm in the top sequencer. So this is actually how you would calculate a polyrhythm. So I'm going to create this and we'll see what's going on here. So if you divide each quarter note into quintuplets and then you play every 4th note, that will give you this 5 in the bar. So when I play this one,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2,
you can hear the grid that
1,
this
2,
5 is
3,
based
4,
on.
5, 1.
So each of these notes is actually occurring on a very specific part of this quintuplet. So on the first one, and then on the 5th one, and then on the 4th, 3rd, 2nd. And that's how you get the 5/4. So polyrhythms, when you have 3s and 2s on one side of it, are fairly easy because this grid that you will have will be triplets or 16th or 8th notes. And that allows you to just think in triplets or 16th or 8th notes and create a polyrhythm very easily. So if I choose a polyrhythm of 3 against 4 and create this with the grid, then all you're doing is playing the quarter notes, dividing it into triplets, and playing every 4th note. So it sounds like this.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
And then you can push up the other voice.
1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1.
Okay, we're not hearing the 4 there because I've got this accent fader up. But you can see how that works. So using the grid option in the polyrhythm will show you how these polyrhythms work. And whenever you have a 3 or a 4, you're going to get 16ths or triplets. And whenever you move to 5s and 6s, you're going to have to subdivide beats into quintuplets or septuplets or something else in order for that to work.
And I guess what happens when you turn the Time Sig Auto off?
So to answer Don's question, what happens if you turn... So I'm going to turn the grid off for a second, and I'll create this 3 against 4 polyrhythm. So we have 3 against 4. So the automatic time signature takes care of choosing a time signature that makes sense for this polyrhythm. So it makes sense to have 4/4 down here so that you're playing a bar of music that you're familiar with, and then the polyrhythm element of it is playing something over the top of that bar of 4/4. But there's no reason that you couldn't write this in a different time signature. So we might want to do 3 against 5, for example. So I'll create that with the auto time signature, and you'll see that it gives us 5/4 down here and 5/4 up here, and you have 3 notes over 5. But we could put this in 4/4 if we wanted, and divide a bar of 4/4 into 5 and divide a bar of 4/4 into 3. And that would look like this. We'll have 3 and 5, and then we'll turn off the auto time signature and set it to 4/4. So now both of these are in 4/4, but this is 5 in the space of 4, and this is 3 in the space of 4. And because 5 in the space of 4 is a polyrhythm, if we push up the 1 fader here, which is playing the quarter note, we actually have a 3-way polyrhythm. We have 3 versus 5 versus 4 in the bar.
1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4,
So
3, 5. 1, 2, 2.
So you can hear the 3-way polyrhythm. If I pull the voice counting down, you will just hear 3 versus 4 versus 5. So you can see, whoops, you can see the 3 here, you can see the 5 here. If you wanted something to indicate the 4, you could push up the big numbers, and that shows you the 4 count of the bar. So that's how you can very easily get a 3-way polyrhythm. You just choose the final, you choose the 2 sides of it here, and then the final one in the time signature. So if you wanted 3 versus 5 versus 7, you would do this. And that's 3 versus 5 versus 7. I'm going to move on to a question that you had, Jack, about Nairobi Transit. And I was thinking about how best to show the music and polynome on screen at the same time, because I can only share one app in AirMeet. And then I realized that on the iPad, there is split screen mode. So if you're unaware of this, you can drag up from the bottom of the iPad and you can pick another app here. So I'm going to use Safari, and I'm just going to drag this to the right. And now we have split screen, and you can choose how much of the screen you want for polynome and how much of the screen you want for your other app. So I'm going to make it half and half so that we can see the notation here. So this is a piece of music by Jeff Bradfield, and Jack asked about this specific bar where there's this complicated looking rhythm in here. So this is in 10/4, I believe. Yes, 10/4. And so there's a bass line here. 1 1 2 1 1 2 1 1 1 2. So 10 beats, and this bass line is fairly consistent through most of the piece. And here you can see we have this complicated looking rhythm and melody on top of that. So I'm going to show you how you can program this into polynome to help you understand what's going on. So I'll begin by creating a new preset. So tap on the plus and create new preset and call it Nairobi Transit. And whenever you do that, whenever you create a new preset, it will be based on whatever your default preset is. So if you have a preference for click sounds or metronome sounds and the volumes of the metronome faders and things like that as a starting blank slate, you can customize that in the default. So for this, I'm going to use sequencer 2 for the bass part here, the bass line, and sequencer 1 for the treble clef. And so I'll tap and edit the pattern for sequencer 2. And I will change the time signature to 10/4. And then I'll enter a, I was going to call it a crotchet because I'm British, and a half note, quarter note, half note, and then 2 quarter notes and a half note. And you'll see here that we'll fill up. So we've got one full bar of 10/4, so that's looking good. And I'm going to enter the pitches for these notes. So my bass clef reading isn't great, but once when you're tapping on the notes here, you get the rhythm entry. When you tap in line 1 or line 2 below, you get the option to enter sounds. So if by default, you will see sound buttons like this. And if you tap where it says sound buttons, you can choose keyboard, and then you can enter a melodic idea. So I believe this is F sharp, and I think it will be down here. So F sharp, I think that's A, B, C sharp, and then A, B, A. So I think that's the bass line there. So we can hear how this sounds. Notice that we're in 4/4 up here and 10/4 down here. So now I want to enter the treble clef part up here. So I am going to set the time signature here to 10/4. And I'll say just change the time signature. So that will just leave those 4 notes. And then I'm going to edit the pattern here. And tap and hold on delete to clear everything. And so now we need to enter this rhythm. So we have a quarter note rest. And when you have this, the 8th note rest and the 8th note rest and 8th note, there are different ways to enter these. So one of the ways is to go to the 8th note option here and do 8th note rest, 8th note, 8th note rest, 8th note. Or if you wanted to just stay on the quarter note panel here, you could enter 2 8th notes. And if you long press on this button, we want to enter it after the highlighted note. Long pressing brings up the edit, and you can just remove that note there. And so I could do that again, long press and remove the first note. Or if you've entered this and you want to edit it, you can click the edit button here, and that does the same thing, remove that note. Or a final way is to duplicate what we just entered here. So long press on this and choose duplicate, and that will put a copy in there. So with that knowledge to enter these few notes here, you can go arrest and then remove that and then duplicate. That's probably the quickest way to get that part in. So then we have our polyrhythm, and you can see there's a bracket that says 4 over the top. And it doesn't tell you how many notes that's over, but if we look in the bass clef, you can see this 4 is covering this note and this note, which is 3 quarter notes in total. So this is 4 quarter notes in the space of 3. So to enter that, we need this panel here to be showing divisions of 3 quarter notes. So we can switch to the half note here and turn on the dot. And now these are all divisions of 3 quarter notes. So basically, this panel on the side here, whatever you've got selected here, all of these buttons are a division of this note value. So these are all divisions of a whole note. If you switch to a half note, these are all divisions of a half note. These are all divisions of a quarter note, 8th note, and 16th note. And then if you turn on the dot, you can have divisions of 3/8 notes, or it's a double dot, so divisions of, I don't know what that is, 7 16th notes. And then here we've got a half note with the dot, so that's divisions of 3 quarter notes. So what we want is the 4 here, which gives us 4 over 3. This is 4 over 3. And we want to remove this first one. So I'll click on the edit button and tap on that first note to remove it. So now we've got this part of the rhythm. And then at the end here, we've got a bracket with a 3 on it. And you can see in the bass clef 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's over 4 quarter notes. So I'll turn off the dot and go to the whole note, which is 4 quarter notes. And we have that bracket with a 3, and underneath you've got these 2 brackets also with a 3. So this is actually saying 3 over 2. So essentially we've got 6 notes here, the black notes, in the space of 4. So that's what I'm going to enter, is 6 in the space of 4. So that's the rhythmic part of this bar here. And then I'm going to enter the melody. And you can see we've only got 2 pitches per note. So I can actually enter that in polynome. If there were more, then you would have to choose which ones you wanted to use. So on line 1 here, I'm going to enter the higher notes. And on line 2, I'll enter the lower notes. So tap on line 1. So we have A, B, C sharp, what's that, E, D sharp, and then we're at this one, so we're at C sharp, I think, because we already had the sharp. So then the top line here you can see is this larger bracket with the 3, so it's playing a half note here, so we don't actually want anything on this note. That will be this one, but we're jumping to this one. So I'm going to hit the rest button, and that will not play a sound on this note. So then we have B, and then again, a rest takes care of this space, and then finally A. So this is one place to be very aware of in polynome. You can see that I've finished entering the melody that I want, and the cursor's flashing, and you can see this grayed out A here. By default, what polynome does is plays whatever pitches you've entered or sounds you've entered against these notes, but when you've stopped entering them, it will just loop whatever you entered before. So if I don't put a rest in here, it's going to jump back and play that A on this note, and then it will play the B on this note next time it comes around. It's going to loop these things. So you want to fill to the end with rest. So I'm going to put a rest so that we've entered a sound for every note. So that's the top line, and then I'll go to line 2 and enter this. So I think we have a A down there, B, C sharp, E, G sharp, and then so here we got a B, and then an A, and then G sharp, and then A again, and then G sharp, and then F sharp. My pitch sight reading is a little out of practice, so I'm going to save the changes here, and then hopefully we have this entered. Okay, so what we're hearing there is just the bottom line, because this line 1 is muted, so I'll turn this up. So I think that's how it's meant to sound.
Yeah, that's it. That's cool.
So once you have this, you can do things like mute just the top line. So in the mixer down here, you'll notice that I can pull down just one half, so we're just hearing the lower part here, or both lines. If you wanted to link these together, you can tap on this chain button here, and that will link those 2 faders, so you can bring up. And then if I pull down sequencer 2, then we're muting the bass part. So now you can hear, whoops, what's going on just with the treble clef. And if you wanted to work on this 4/3 polyrhythm or the 6/4 polyrhythm, you can do that by creating a polyrhythm as we did before, turn the grid on, and then you can see how to dissect this and how to figure out rhythmically how that should sound.
Quick question. How would I, maybe this is another session, how do I use the scales sounds?
So let me create a new preset, call it scales, and let's edit the pattern and just put in, say, 8 notes. So we'll go to the sounds. And so here, is this what you're talking about? This button? Yeah. So basically all this does is shows you what the scales are. So if you wanted to know what a D harmonic major scale was, it shows you the notes of the scale there.
How would I apply that to my drumming? Is this something to learn just so I understand scales? I mean, I play keyboard, so that's why I was interested in it.
I really just put it in there because my harmonic knowledge is not that great, and I thought it might be useful to be able to see what they were. So if I'm playing around with melodic ideas, it's nice to see what these different scales are.
All right.
So that's all it is, really.
Okay, that's what I wondered. Thank you very much. That's
my pleasure. Let me explain a little bit about how the accents and the sounds work. So, like I mentioned earlier, when you are on the sounds line here and you enter some sounds, if you don't continue to enter sounds, the ones that you've entered will loop over that pattern. So that's a way to enter a single stroke roll, is to just enter one of each hand, and it will repeat automatically over the rhythm that you've got. You can change this behavior by tapping this reset off button, and this gives you different options about what will happen. So if you said fill cycle with rests, then that will play nothing on these. It basically adds rests to the rest of these notes. And there are other things that you can do. You can say reset each cycle, which means that if you had something like a 3-note sticking, so left, right, right, if I turn this to reset off, then this sticking will repeat and go over the bar line. So when I play this, you'll notice that it ends with left, right. On the repeat, it's going to have a right on the beginning here. Oh, let's turn that volume up. See that the sticking changes each time because it's just looping what you put into the sticking section. But you might want something like this that will loop these 3 notes, but then when you get to the new bar, it resets. So that's what the other options in here are. So if you say reset each cycle, for example, and it gives you a bit of an explanation here, but that will loop the sticking. But then instead of looping back and going over the bar line, it will reset when it gets to the beginning. So it sounds like this. So with the accents, by default, when you add an accent or a diddle or something in here, it's adding it to that specific note. So if I put an accent here, it's adding it to just that note. And if I put a flam here, it's adding it to just this note. But what you can do is clear the accents, and there's a button at the bottom that says tap to detach accents. And then the accents will work in the same way that the stickings work. So if I put an accent here, you'll see it's going to loop that single accent over the whole pattern. And if I move to the right and add a spacer, now we're accenting every other note. So you can use this to, for example, accent every 3rd note, and this is set to reset off. So you have a different set of options for the accents as for the stickings. So the accents here will go over the bar line because it's set to reset off, whereas the sticking will reset each cycle. This is getting a little complicated, I realize, but if we play this, you'll find that this accent will continue to loop over the bar line, and you'll see the accents change where the sticking doesn't. So it's as if you just said, play every 3rd note, no matter what happens with the accents. And here you said, play left, right, right on a repeat. But when you get to the new bar line, then start over with left, right, right again. Ron says, "Hi Joe, you may have covered this previously. I'm creating a new preset of a composition I'm working on. What's the max number of bars I can input?" You can input as many as you like, but I would suggest doing it in a playlist because it makes it much easier to edit and loop certain bars and things like that. It gets very unwieldy when you have a really long preset like this and you're trying to assign stickings, and you will get a warning at some point saying that Polynome is going to slow down because you have too many notes, and it recommends using a playlist. But here's when it catches up with, by clicking, 16 or so bars, maybe more. You can see even with this it's slowing down. No, there's the pop-up. So there's 16 bars of eighth notes, and if you wanted to enter sticking over all of that, it gets very difficult to do things. And then if you wanted to change something in the middle, it gets tricky. And when you're playing this back, this will start scrolling, and it's not easy to read when it's scrolling. So my suggestion for something like this is to utilize a playlist. So we'll tap on the presets button and choose playlist and create a new playlist with the plus button and call it longer piece or linger piece. And what I would do is tap on the plus, new item in the playlist, and call it bar 1. And then I'm going to just unmute. I would set this to be whatever you want it to be. So let's say you did just have 16 bars of eighth notes. So there's bar 1. I'll save the changes. And then what I do is make the changes that you want. There's different ways to do it. One of them is to click on plus, duplicate item with new name, and I call it bar 2. Now you have a copy in bar 2, and you can do that to fill up your playlist, and then you can just modify each bar individually, and it's much easier than editing one really long preset.